discussing percutaneous fusion and endoscopic resection of a thoracic metastatic tumor. I'm from the University of Illinois at Chicago. We had a 63-year-old gentleman with a history of hepatocellular carcinoma who presented with several months of left-sided flank pain and back pain. Neurologically, he was intact. However, he had left radicular pain in the T12 distribution. If you notice, it's a Bilski class 2 with significant stenosis as well as root compression occurring. It was a T12 contrast-enhancing lesion with invasion into left T12 pedicle, causing, and also within the vertebral body causing displacement of the thecal sac. Additional imaging on CT scan, it looks like an osteolytic lesion causing a level of instability as well. We had got an angiogram that showed significant vascularization. Rationale procedure, the SIN score developed by the Spinal Oncology Study Group demonstrated it was a potentially unstable lesion given that it was at a transition level at T12. Our goal was to decompress the thecal sac, prevent neurological deterioration, as well as provide future radiation therapy, as Dr. Nair beautifully explained the importance of doing SBRT postoperatively as well, associated with the separation surgery. Doing this endoscopically, I guess the pitfalls, the benefits, and the pitfalls associated with it are decompressing neural elements, tumor debulking, and destabilization, but the risks are neurological deficit, infection, hematoma, which are pretty much universal. Alternatives, we could have done observation. However, this was unstable. Radiotherapy alone, however, the instability. Open surgical decompression fusion with tumor embolization to reduce the blood loss. Especially with hepatocellular carcinoma, it's very vascular. So if we were going to either go open or endoscopic, we needed to do tumor embolization first, and that's the way that we approach this. So the Adamkowitz was identified on at the left side at T10. We did basically embolization. I had my neurointerventional doctor do a T12 intercostal segment artery feeder using glue embolization as shown. This is our procedure setup. We had for this endoscopic resection. This was actually, I found out this was the first one done in the United States. So, this was a procedure that we were kind of developing, but there's a lot of moving parts associated with it. We had neuronavigation, which was critical. We placed the patient prone on a Jackson table, placed in the neuromonitoring array on the spinous process with one midline incision, and then used a lateral superior incision as well as a working port. These are the key surgical steps. We did the left-sided hemilaminectomy, developed a plane between the thecal sac and the tumor itself, debulked the tumor, identified the left T12 nerve root, and then we used percutaneous carbon fiber screws that are helped out with radiation, so we were able to radiate that patient 3 to 5 days after surgery, and then placed bilateral rods from T11 to L1. This is just a short video. Pull it up. How am I supposed to get to
this video?
Yeah. Okay, let me get to Can you do some audio? Is there audio? Can we do some audio?
Audio?
Yeah.
A subperiosteal dissection of the soft tissues off of the underlying lamina is first performed prior to the endoscope being brought into the field using blunt dissection. Monopolar electrocautery and the endoscope are then brought into the field, shown here. We then bring our image guidance into the field, probe into the field to confirm the appropriate level and location. A high-speed diamond drill was then used to perform our hemilaminotomy. A diamond drill bit is preferable because of its hemostatic properties. Further hemostasis can also be obtained with the use of electrocautery. Through the lamina, the underlying yellow ligament is visualized. And once our depth is known, the laminectomy is completed with the use of our diamond drill. After completion of the laminectomy, a curette is then used to dissect the yellow ligament off of the underlying dura and also to create a plane within the epidural space. Here, the dura and thecal sac is clearly in view, and again, the Kerrison rongeur is used to widen our laminectomy both rostrally and caudally. At this point, inferiorly and laterally, the tumor is evident. A freer is used to dissect tumor off of the thecal sac and to create a plane between tumor and dura. Pituitary rongeurs are then used to both resect tumor and to obtain a frozen specimen for pathology, which in this case was carcinoma. Further hemostasis within the tumor bed can be performed with use of monopolar electrocautery. Preoperative embolization was imperative in this case in order to limit bleeding during the surgery and to increase visibility when doing an endoscopic approach.
Sorry, let me speed it up a little bit.
And starting of the
So intraoperatively, we use navigation to determine that we
intraoperative
were
C-arm image reveals placement of bilateral.
intraoperatively, we were able to use navigation that showed that we were able to get to the anterior aspect of the tumor and get a good separation of the spinal cord and the thecal sac. Now, let me go to the next slide. Afterwards, we placed in minimally invasive carbon fiber screws, as was stated by Dr. Nair, from T11 to L1. And this was done in a minimally invasive fashion. The reason to do this was so that we could radiate the patient very quickly after the surgery while they are in-house in the hospital. So post-operatively, the patient was intact, remained intact, had resolution of his back and flank pain. And obviously, when we are doing these types of surgeries, the main emphasis is quality of life. And the patient did not have any significant post-operative pain after the surgery was done and was able to get radiation therapy very quickly. This was done 3 to 5 days afterwards, and we don't really have to worry about wound breakdown because of the endoscopic and MIS nature of the surgery. So basically, this is useful. I feel this is a paradigm shift in terms of doing these procedures, especially when we're looking at quality of life, doing it in an endoscopic manner. And we were able to publish this report and as well as this video in the World of Neurosurgery, I think recently within the last month, describing this approach. But I would like to, I think my time is up, so I'd like to open up to any questions.